This is a second part of my two-part series on proteins, I guess. Just two small videos that I made. The first one was responding to Micro and sort of, just correcting one of his contradictory points and just talking about if proteins had a substantial enough impact in the game. The link will be in the description if you want to watch that, but this is the follow-up to that because I did say that proteins were a symptom to a bigger issue in the game. And that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about in this video. But first, we need to ask ourselves, what are proteins and what are they used for? Protein items in RuneScape 3 are items that essentially, they don't have a tier and they just give you a lot of XP and they can be used anywhere. To give you an example, you have protein blanks or protein logs, for example, bars, where you can use these things as if you were doing the skill normally, but you don't need to use any item from the skill, and they give you usually a lot of XP, and usually they're pretty AFK. Now, the reason as to why they are in the game, and we need to talk about this because this is actually pretty important to what I'm talking about, or what I'm going to talk about next. Mostly the reason as to why proteins are in the game is because Jagex wants to make money, sure, but the purpose that they serve in the gameplay is to make it easier for you to level up your skills, to unlock quests and unlock content later on in the game, when the game is more fun. I think that if you've ever seen any RuneScape 3 series, and I have this meme where I say that, RuneScape 3 series essentially go from episode 1 and you start an Ironman account, and then episode 10 and you're fighting next, just to sort of show that people end up like skipping a lot of content and rushing early game content, and that's mainly because a lot of late game content in RuneScape 3 is really fun, and as a result, people kind of skip content and they rush the early game. And proteins play that role exactly. Proteins exist so you actually skip the skills as opposed to having to actually engage with them, and because they're the best XP per hour and they're usually overpowered and they are FK, which means that they are super easy to use, you don't end up actually engaging with the skills and you end up just seeing the skills as if they are numbers that go up, that you then finish and then you never think about them again. That's the usually prevalent mentality that RuneScape 3 has. If the content isn't good, we skip it so we can get you to the point where the content is good. Essentially, it's the pinnacle of it gets good when you're 100 hours in or 500 hours in. Or in the case of RuneScape, it never actually gets good. But essentially, that is the mentality. And I think that for me to tell you or to show you why I think that this mentality is problematic and compare it to how old school mostly deals with skills, let's talk about everyone's favorite skill, agility. Everyone absolutely loves this skill. In fact, RuneScape 3 loves this skill so much that they came up with a way to completely never engage with it in the Silver Rock boots. Essentially, RuneScape 3 has an item called Silver Rock Boots. It was mainly related to Treasure Hunter and MTX because of course it fucking was. But this item allows you to put in Silver Rock feathers, which are feathers that when you are wearing the boots, and the feathers essentially act as charges for the boots, when you get an XP drop doing any other skill wearing these boots, you also get agility XP. So essentially getting 200 million agility XP in RuneScape 3 is zero time. Like you never need to engage with the skill at all. Like you just don't need to engage with the skill, right? As a result, ever since the boots have been added, you have only really one major agility update that I can think of, which is the Anachronia agility course, which granted, and I'll give props to Jagex on this one, it is a really good course. And it does provide a reward that is actually tied to agility, and in this case movement, which is the codex movement abilities that give you double charges. But for us to understand why this approach of Silver Rock Boots is actually super detrimental for the game, we need to understand that approach isn't unique. And that's why I say that protein items are a symptom of a bigger problem. Because step in RuneScape 3, where Jagex gives you extra XP as opposed of actually just making something interesting to engage with, is so prevalent. Yes, protein items exist, but so do lamps, so do mini games that just give you way too much XP, like penguins every week. You have you have a certain spell that just kills the item essentially, or like destroys the item from the game, and you get double the amount of XP that you would have gotten otherwise, right? So if you get a log, instead of getting 100 XP, you get 200 because it destroys the item. Certain elite outfits destroy the item to also give you extra XP in the skill. Essentially, there's so many updates in RuneScape 3 that are guided towards giving you a lot of XP so you can skip the levels more easily, the annoying levels, because no one wants to do fishing, or no one wants to do agility, or wood cutting, or this and that and the other, as opposed of just making this skill overall more interesting to do. And honestly, is that even possible to do? So I brought the example of agility, and that wasn't random. That's because old school also has a problem with agility. Or rather, it used to have a problem with agility. You see, when old school was released, there were essentially two main ways of training agility. You either did the normal courses like the Gnome course or the Apatol course, and those old courses, Barbarian course as well, or you did Brimhaven agility, which none of these are very fun for players to engage with. So Jagex came up with a new method of training agility. Well, in reality, it's the same method, but they came up with rooftop agility courses. Rooftop agility courses is exactly what it sounds like. You go through rooftops and you gain agility XP. Or in total, rather, they added 9 courses, I think, to the game, which is just triple the amount of courses that the game used to have when it comes to agility. So now you have a better progression for the skill and way more choice when it came to actually training the skill. But that wasn't all, because rooftop agility came with 2 new rewards. Number one, you can buy a melees with Marks of Grace, because Marks of Grace was a currency introduced that you can only get when doing rooftop agility courses. This is as a result to preserve the place that rooftop agility has in the game. Even if it's not the best XP, it's still worth doing because you get Marks of Grace. And you buy that melees that you can use in energy pots to create stamina pots. Essentially, stamina pots not only give you 20 energy, but for 2 minutes they make your energy deplete slower than normal. They also introduced probably one of the most iconic outfits in old school nowadays, which was the graceful outfit. The graceful outfit reduces your weight, which means that if you need to run anywhere in the game, because your weight affects the depletion of run energy, you would wear the graceful outfit. Overall, pretty good update, more choices for agility, better progression, new rewards. But Jagex wasn't done, because later on they added underwater agility. That also gave thieving XP, I'm pretty sure. At least the way you train it. So with the Fossil Island being released in old school in like 2017, if I'm not mistaken, they released the underwater agility. This agility method was actually the best XP in the game. I'm pretty sure at like 60 or 70k XP per hour. But it also gave you its own rewards. With the items, I think it's pearls that you collect in the underwater agility section. Essentially, you can buy a trident thing, which is mostly a cosmetic, and you can also buy sacks of red spider eggs, I'm pretty sure, as well as you get some other drops during the minigame. So they added an entire different agility course, I guess, quote unquote, even though it's more of a minigame than a course, with its own rewards. And again, they weren't done. Later on, when they released Dark Mayor, they released Hallowed Sepulchre, which is a place that I love so much that I made like 3 videos on it. Now, Aloe Sepulchre is a place, it's mainly a minigame, and it has 5 floors. You go through them, there's a lot of hazards, and it's sort of like this Indiana Jones where you just dodge all of the things. I might actually just use that as a footage for this video, but you dodge all of these obstacles, and you can loot chests that give you loot, stuff like Renar seeds or Sanfew serum, or you also get old lockpicks to use at barrows. But in the 5th floor, there's a chest that can give you a ring, the Ring of Endurance, that costs like 30 mil, where you can essentially just put a lot of stamina potions in, and as a result, you don't need to bring the stamina potions with you because all of the charges or doses of the stamina potions are in the ring. But that's not the only thing that Aloe Sepulchre actually offers. Aloe Sepulchre also offers, despite its own minigame rewards, 2 other things. One is a graceful recolor, so you can recolor your graceful to black, and the other is a transmog for your agility pet, so you can change the appearance of your pet. And if you think that's all, no, because Jagex, especially with the release of the collection log, also did 2 other updates. One was to the Brimhaven dungeon, which, while they didn't make it necessarily better, they did add a graceful recolor, navy blue or dark blue, to it, as well as a hook, captain's hook, that you could actually buy. So even if you're not going to use that as a way of doing agility, it's still cosmetic rewards that you can actually go for. And in the Apetal Agility course, they added the ability for you to transmog your backpack that you get at the Ring Monkey Madness 2, depending on the amount of laps that you actually did at the Apetal course. The most laps that you have to do for the last transmog, which, by the way, all of these things are in the collection log, and of course I did it because collection log, is 2000 Apetal laps, which is around 90 to 92 agility. So just because of a collection log, I got 2 entire agility levels, equivalent to like half a mil XP or something along those lines. So yeah, that's pretty much so far, because I'm pretty sure that Jagex has other ideas. I heard like a God Wars dungeon agility course, so you can actually see other people doing the bosses and see what drops they got and stuff like that. There's a lot of ideas floating around, but my point is that while RuneScape 3 added one worthwhile agility course, Old School added 2 entire minigames and like 9 agility courses, as well as all of them having their own unique rewards, as well as adding cosmetics to old agility courses on top of all of that. Is agility worthwhile in Old School? Probably not. A lot of people still don't like doing it. I have my problems with Aloe Sepulchre at the end of the day. However, one thing is pretty true. While agility is really not a favorite skill even in Old School, it's also not the most hated anymore. People learn to tolerate it because of the amount of rewards it has associated to it, the rewards that people want to go for, and just the amount of methods you have to do. If you don't like doing rooftops, you can try your hand at Hallowed Sepulchre. Maybe you like that, maybe you like Brimhaven Dungeon, maybe you like Underwater Agility. There's always different things to try with different rewards that you might want to go for. And honestly, even though I don't like Hallowed Sepulchre, and I have my own reasons as to why, a lot of people seem to like it, and I think that alone made agility quite worthwhile doing for a lot of people. And again, while it's not, the favorite skill of any player that I know, it made agility far more tolerable. So compared to RuneScape 3, what they did in Old School is people don't like agility, so instead of us introducing a way for people to skip agility so they can get the level requirements to do the quests they need and then never touch the skill again, we're gonna make it worthwhile and give rewards that players want with agility. We're gonna make it better to interact with the skill. We're gonna find different ways of training the skill, right? RuneScape 3 on the other end, sure, there were more updates than the Anachronia agility course, but most of them were super minor, and again, because of the Silver Rock boots being in the game, you don't really engage with them. None of the rewards are worthwhile enough except for the codex in Anachronia, which again just goes to show that maybe we need more ways of training the skill and more rewards directed to the skill. And the thing is, this is the prevalent mentality that has been for years in RuneScape 3, where players, and I've seen this in guides a lot as well, where players try to be super efficient so they can, skip the boring part of the game and get to the good one. Except players never stop to think that any part of the game can be fun. Any part of the game can be the good one. And I think that in old school, what people realized is that, especially with the special accounts and now the collection log, is that a lot of parts of the game can be good. And if they aren't, we can just improve them. Because we should try and improve content in the game as opposed to just skipping it or finding easy ways to skip it. And that's exactly what old school mostly focuses on. Now, in RuneScape 3, this doesn't mean that it can't work, mainly because Jagex has already improved the skills, and it has worked. One of the major examples? Mining and smithing rework. While some people still don't enjoy the skills too much, it did bring new content into the game, it modernized the skills, and it brought more rewards to the game. And at the end of the day, what did it do? It made it so before mining was just really bad, it was boring, smithing didn't really offer anything new. Now, while some people might still not, enjoy it that much, I also really haven't seen anyone say that they hate mining or that they hate smithing anymore. It's a skill that it has its place in the game, it has its rewards, some people like it, some people don't like it too much, but people tolerate it. And that's exactly what Jagex should keep doing with RuneScape 3 skills, because that's exactly what players want. And I know that this video was supposed to be about proteins, but that's exactly the point. Proteins represent the opposite. Proteins represent you skipping a skill as opposed of improving it, of making it better, of giving it more rewards and more content. Because if our mentality is that we need proteins because the skill is bad, so I can skip it faster because I get faster XP rates and the skill is easier to train, you get to the point where where's the space to give these fun rewards like the Trident in old school, or to give better rewards or interesting rewards or quality of life rewards like the Ring of Endurance, right? Where's the space to make fun mini games and fun ways of interacting with the skill? Ultimately, there's no space because most players are not going to engage with the skill because they'll just do proteins at the end of the day. And I know that I said in my last video that I think that the impact of proteins in the game is small, and it is, but my problem isn't so much with proteins themselves, but what they represent with the game. They represent skipping the content as opposed of making bad content better. Because if you make bad content better, you're not skipping it, but you're making it worthwhile to engage with. Proteins don't do that, and as a result, proteins are, in my opinion, the representation of the wrong mentality to have when approaching this issue. And as I've said, I don't think that proteins are the only thing to blame. I don't think they have a major impact. But they do represent this, as do stuff like, stars or lamps and things of the sorts that come from Treasure Enter that mostly look at skipping skills as opposed of engaging with them. And ultimately, people want to engage with skills. And you see that especially with skills like archaeology and invention. Especially invention. When I look at invention, there are ways that are super cheap and super fast to train the skill. Like you could get 200 million like a month. It's really not that hard to get a lot of XP in the skill. And yet, most people take it slow. They don't rush the skill. They don't gain a lot of XP in it. And that's because, what's the point? The system itself is good to engage with. People want to engage with the system, people want to get the perks, and they want to engage with the skill. That's why people don't rush it. And that's why I think that ultimately Jagex should invest much more into making the skills better, into making content better and giving more of it, giving their own rewards. So even if one skill no longer gives the most XP per hour, there's still a unique reward from it that players want and so they'll engage with it, even if it's a bit tedious or whatever, right? That's the approach they should have. Unfortunately, with the existence of proteins and really what they represent, it means that these just can't be achieved. And personally, I don't think proteins should be nerfed, I think Protean should just be removed from the game. Now, obviously, they are an MTX item, and I know that Jagex won't ever remove them from the game. Same with Silver Rock Boots and lamps and stuff like that. It's Treasure Enter, MTX. Jagex is not going to remove it from the game. However, if they're not going to remove it, I also think that players should change their mentality and demand Jagex to actually pay attention to the skills as opposed of giving them the easy way out.